The reason you should purchase a motor mount and make sure your motor mounts are good, just one thing, the clutch engagement is so consistent and so smooth. That alone. I'm excited about this episode. We have a new passenger motor mount because the one on the car is shot and I can feel the shake in it when I'm driving it and drives me crazy, no pun intended. And we have some new parts from Mountune in this box. This one is gonna make a big difference in how the car feels behind the wheel. And I'm wondering if this mount, the OEM one, is worn out also because there's just so much slop. A beautiful rear motor mount from Mountune. And then, this should be really easy to install. Recirculation valve for the Focus RS. Get rid of that janky plastic one. We'll talk about it more as we get into it. Let's get an up close look and get to work. Belly pan is off. All I used was my power ratchet, T30 Torx, and then I think someone else put these in, but I had some 8 mils. Super easy to get off, but now that's free. That's so we can get the rear motor mount on. I want to install the passenger motor mount, and as you saw, OEM. Why did I do OEM versus a aftermarket? This car, I just want it to be clean, OEM plus like feel behind the wheel, and I don't want to have a bunch of vibration. And this mount is just bad, and these mounts do a fine job, so I was like, you know what, let me just get an OEM one so it feels normal. And then we're gonna have added vibration with that rear motor mount, but just the right amount in my opinion. When you do the passenger motor mount, it brings so much more vibration into the cab. I feel like anyone 24 years and older would not be a fan of if it's your daily driver. Like I want this to be for someone soon. If you want to buy this car, Cameron Alford at CarManspeed.com. Hit me up, it'll be for sale soon. Underneath this coolant expansion tank is the motor mount for the passenger side we're gonna get to. We gotta get this out of the way, but before we do that, it's very, very important that I put a jack underneath the motor, because when this motor mount gets loose, the whole thing's gonna wanna fall through. I'm gonna put a piece of cardboard in between the jack and the engine, just to be safe. Just a little bit of pressure on the engine. You just want it to stay there. You don't want to crank on it and lift it up. You just want it to stay there. Cut the clip off on this side. You see me talk about this all the time, the O-ring removal tool. I use it on everything. There's another one on this side over here. I just wiggle it off. Now we can kind of maneuver this out of the way. That'll be okay for now. Full access to our motor mount now. The lower bolts are 15 mil. Breaking them loose by hand. These 3 top ones, they're big. 18 mil. Okay, everything's out. Now I can just pull this out. It definitely was not ruined or worn out completely, but I could flex that motor mount with my hand, and this new one I cannot. So I'm gonna put the 2 bottom ones in first, because these are a little bit more important to line up. Get that started by hand. That one also. Sweet, that's it. Cool expansion tank back. I'll top this off a little bit too. 1 down, 2 to go. I want to do the recirculation valve next. It's a T30 Torx that holds these 3 bolts on. I have my little stubby icon ratchet with my T30 on it. Let's see, first shot with this tool after a little YouTube search, if this will do the trick. I just got to remove that wheel over there and we can get right to it. Really difficult spot to film. Head inside the fender liner, head up in here. All we got to do is take off that line and those 3 T30 bolts, and we'll swap it over. If we go underneath, you actually get a pretty good view. It's so hard to film this. You got this, I promise. You can see the hose. Maybe Justin could throw an arrow on the screen. Gonna get the hose off, and then I'll take the bolts off all the way. This should get the hose off. OEM recirculation valve. This is how it works. Rubber, plunger, seal, spring. This outer part, not very precise. If you look at the Mountune one, it's just one piece all together. You can just push that center part in. You can see where air is gonna escape. What's happening is that when you build up boost pressure and then you let off, something has to give, and this valve is what opens and closes to let air circulate through to build boost pressure or relieve it and let it go to the intake. So when you let off, all that air has to go somewhere because you're dropping the pressure in the system, and it goes to your intake thanks to the recirculation valve right here. This is where you would also install a blow-off valve if you wanted to vent this air that would be recirculated into the intake, into the atmosphere, and that's what makes a loud noise. But we're not gonna do that because that just doesn't suit this build very well. I'm a fan of blow-off valves in the right setting, so I apologize if that's what you're hoping for. This thing is nice though. The diverter valve is done. I'll show you around. Couple Newton meters of pressure, got the line on, got the hose clamp on, and we're dialed. I think I saved the hardest for last. Let's find out and do the rear motor mount. That's gonna make the car feel so good. Can't wait to drive with it. We got a bunch of 15s on this thing. Got my wrench. Breaking them loose by hand. Technically the mount itself is loose and now I can move the motor, but we gotta get this out of the way to get the whole mount out. Flex head sockets, best investment ever. And where my hand is at on this side, there's a 15 that's super obvious. You can only get in there with a ratcheting wrench or just a regular wrench. It'll take you longer, but that's all right. So right here, it's hard to get in there without blocking your view, but there's a deal that's holding some hoses that slides off the bolt head. I'm gonna push it all the way off, out of the way. What a pain. 10 years later. Come on, I wasn't there. Dude, it's out. This thing is what's holding us up. And this comes out all easy. Freshy Mountune. Kind of sliding everything into place where it wants to go. This that came out of that hard spot is gross. I'm gonna put some PB Blaster on it. So this bolt, the one that's a pain, back in we go, a couple clicks at a time. To get this bolt in, I just used a flathead and maneuvered the new rear motor mount until that hole was lined up. Now what we need to do is get this bolt through the rear motor mount to connect these two. I'm gonna use my pry bar. Push it through all the way. Nut on the back side. The bolt over here, need to put it back. Okay, so last part, besides the belly pan, 19 mil wrench on this side, and then 83 foot-pounds of torque on this bolt. Okay, cool. And we're done. I'm not putting the belly pan on because I want to make sure that I did everything right, and I don't need to get back down there so I can put it on later. I definitely want to go get food right now, so I'm going to take the car and do that. Chipotle, of course. But the startup was disgusting since the day I got this car because I believe that passenger motor mount was worn out. So this is a good telltale. So let's start it up. Exhaust is on loud mode. Awesome. It just, when you would hit the start button, it would go, and then as soon as the motor would catch, it would go, and like you would feel like the dash like shake. It just feels so tight and good. When gears would catch and you would get traction, you would feel that motor like torquing a little bit. So thinking about that being gone as well when we go drive it here, I'm really looking forward to it. The reason you should purchase a motor mount and make sure your motor mounts are good, just one thing, the clutch engagement is so consistent and so smooth. That alone, just the clutch engagement alone, just letting it go, it doesn't have like a moment where you kind of second guess it, where that flex happens. It's just direct. It's just like, hey, I'm ready, we're going. But I'm noticing now, at the same time I'm trying to feel out this motor mount and vibrations, I'm hearing some different turbo noises. Oh, do you hear that? It's way more. Get this thing to boost up. I wish there wasn't freaking burbles this loud right now though. Putting a wastegate actuator on next, and then we're getting it tuned. Oh yeah, no motor play. I closed the valve on the exhaust. I'm gonna let you hear these turbo noises now that the exhaust is quiet. Forgot we could do that. Spoiled life, you know, you got that valve. I leave the remote up here. Sitting at the light, vibrations while idling. Let's just say a race car mount, a solid mount, you add like 60% more vibrations. This is about 10. Not enough for even a passenger to notice. It's enough for you to notice, and that's about it. It's really consistent sounding. Can you hear that? This is one of those things that's just better in real life. Through video, you're gonna be able to hear it. Maybe throw headphones on and it feels like you're here, but it's definitely noticeable and it changes the driving experience. I'm just pumped. All the play in the drivetrain with the engine is gone, and it just feels like it should. I'm gonna get me some Chipotle, and then we'll conclude this episode. If you want your Focus RS to have a better clutch engagement, just a better feel more connected to the car with a little added vibration, a little bit cooler turbo noises that are very noticeable in person, these are great upgrades. I have them linked in the description. You'll have fun installing them. It's not intimidating at all. These are great beginner pieces for you. Not much else to say. It's pretty simple. You saw my reaction. If you haven't seen the video of this exhaust, I think it's the best one that you can get for the car. I'll leave it right here. It's just quiet to make phone calls and have conversations, but straight piped basically at the same time. It's sick. Go check it out if you haven't seen it yet.